today.
One of the best ways to build a healthier local economy is by shopping locally. Teamster Advantage is a shop local program started by Teamster Local 1932 that has brought together hundreds of locally owned businesses to provide discounts for residents who make shopping locally their priority. Everything from restaurants like Corky's to fun times at SB Raceway and much, much more. If you're not currently a Teamster and you want access to these local business discounts, contact Jennifer at 909-889-8377, extension 224. Give her a call. That number again is 909-889-8377, extension 224.
Labor unions built the middle class, and the middle class built America. That's the message from Teamsters Local 1932, a strong and successful labor union based in San Bernardino that represents over 14,000 hardworking people across the Inland Empire. The Teamsters are ready to help you organize for better pay, increased benefits, and improved working conditions. Reach out to Teamsters 1932 at teamsters1932.org/organize to speak with an organizer today. Workers International that created OCAW. Within 10 years, he had become the International's Citizenship Legislative Director. Many have noted that Mizaki was one of the first labor leaders to build ties with the environmental movement. He linked the hazards in the workplace with hazards in the environment. He showed how workers and the public shared similar concerns about health and safety. He pioneered the Blue-Green Alliance that continues to advocate for green blue-collar jobs, build union reading clubs, and pushed his members toward social justice unionism. Mizaki was a coalition builder and worked with allies for clean water and air, single-payer health care, free education, and just trade policies. The United Steelworkers named their Health, Safety, and the Environment Center in his honor. He died in 2002 of pancreatic cancer. He was 76 years old. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Why would your local newspaper not even mention an important local news story? Perhaps because it's a damning story about the conglomerate owner of the paper. This month, hundreds of journalists working for major dailies in some 24 cities across America joined in an extraordinary mass walkout from their jobs. They were protesting the rank greed, gross mismanagement, and abandonment of democratic duty by the owner of their papers. That owner is Gannett, a massive financial conglomerate that has grabbed control of more than 200 dailies in 43 states. This is a huge, multi-dimensional news story about news itself. But where was the coverage? Big story number 1. Unbeknownst to most people in these communities, they no longer have a local daily paper. Control over everything from news content to price now belongs to bean-counting strangers at Gannett headquarters hundreds of miles away. Big story number 2. More fundamentally, control has moved from journalists to bankers. Gannett is owned by SoftBank, a Japanese hedge fund that has rapaciously looted American newsrooms to grab extravagant fees, salaries, and profits for its rich financial hucksters. Big story number 3. The workaday hometown reporters, photographers, and others who actually produced Gannett's papers are making a gutsy stand against the profiteer, not just for themselves, but for the essential ideals of journalistic integrity and grassroots democracy. Biggest story of all. Gannett's 200 papers cravenly joined in a concerted blanket cover-up of this story, stiffing the public they're supposed to serve and disrespecting the ethical stand of their own employees. Even Gannett's flagship paper, USA Today, which regularly reports on other labor actions, took a dive on covering the journalistic malfeasance of its own overseer. This is Jim Hightower saying, to fight hedge fund corporatization of journalism, go to newsguild.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Questions, comments, something on your mind. Want to hear it? Good on our friends in Maine. Huge, huge victory up in the state of Maine as the No Rights at Work people were pushing to make Maine one of those so-called right-to-work states. And again, this is one of those, and I love the Dr. King quote because it's perfect. It is absolutely true that what they peddle as a right to work comes with no rights and no work. Look, who could be against the right of someone to actually work? No one. But to work for poverty wages in desperate conditions, that we can discuss. And good on the folks in Maine. There was some, from what I understand, there was some scary moments where this potentially could have happened. And for those who don't know, right, what this is about, what right-to-work laws are about, is about starving unions of resources. What they want is they want all of the members to go, I didn't get my way, so I'm not going to pay into the fund that fights for my contract that gets me better wages, hours, conditions. I didn't get my way, so I'm going to withhold my support of something that benefits me. Now, people go, well, you shouldn't have to join a union. You don't. You know, the law does not force you to become a union member. It used to be that you had to pay for what was presented for you. So the contract that I've worked under for 30 years was negotiated by business agents and lawyers and you know, executive committees and all kinds of, you know, worker committees and all kinds of stuff went into building this contract to get me the superior wages, the incredible health care benefits, and the retirement security that I enjoy. What they want is they want people to believe that you can get that for free, that you're going to get a free lunch, and you can freeload off your coworkers. And I've had people say, well, I shouldn't have to. And you go, you shouldn't. And you can go somewhere else. That's how it's always worked, because not every job is a unionized job. I wish it were. I wish every job paid a living wage with good health care and retirement security. I wish we had that kind of economy. But good on the folks in Maine for quashing this, because it needs to happen, which is why I keep hoping that at some point we, the working people of this country, come around to the idea that we do need to pass major comprehensive labor law reform in the form of the PRO Act, undo all of the horrible of Taft-Hartley, and give workers the ability to collectively bargain. Again, you don't have to be a member, but you do have to pay for what you get. And I've told this story a bunch of times. It was probably 12, 15 years ago. The Chamber of Commerce in my neighborhood held their gala, and they had a popular speaker come in. And I'm like, I would like to see the speaker, please. And they said, well, ticket prices are this much. And I said, well, no, I want the member rate. You know, the member rate was free. And they say, well, you're not a member. And I go, well, what's that got to do with anything? You're pushing these no rights at work. You're pushing the same thing in the workplace. Why can't I freeload on you? Well, that's not how it works. I go, well, then maybe you should stop advocating for what you won't let me do. And this is one of those things where you go, corporate America understands. They understand that when workers organize and come together, they have power. And that power manifests itself in better wages, hours, conditions, better opportunities, you know, all kinds of things. And they don't like that. That means more for you, more for the person who right now is, you know, running the punch press, or the person who's driving the truck, or sweeping the streets, or swinging the hammer. It's about putting more money in your pocket, better opportunities under your family's roof. And they don't like that. It's about power. And I keep coming back to this. Have I been thrilled with all of my labor experiences? No. When you're dealing with people, you got headaches sometimes. But on the whole, in a heartbeat, I would join a union. I wish I could take all the money I have and get the kind of return on investment I've gotten from my union dues. And I think we need to be talking about these things in these kind of terms. Because right now, we're focused on is, inflation. What if it were the 1970s again? My grandfather was, was a Teamster truck driver back then. 1 year they got 3 raises because their cost of living adjustment went up because inflation was so high. How many contracts today do you know have that kind of cost of living adjustment added to it? Not many. And that's because union density has been under assault for decades now. They never stop. And look, just because they lost today in Maine doesn't mean they're going to stop. They'll be back next legislative session and the next, because it's what the moneyed interests want. It's what the very wealthy want. And as we know, our very wealthy, they get what they want. Now, what I do find is kind of interesting. I've been seeing some Republican representatives pointing their fingers and saying, neoliberals, ruin this country. And there's the part of me that goes, again, like the Ted Cruz quote earlier, does he believe it or is he stupid? And I got to tell you, I don't think these people are stupid. I think they know exactly what they're doing. Because if I know the word liberal is in the word, I know this, but the big liberal ideology, the big neoliberal ideology was the Reagan-Thatcher ideology. It's what they promoted: free trade, hyper-individualism, undue state intervention, break unions, tear down capital borders, all of this stuff that our neoliberals knew what they were doing. Deregulation. I mean, I'm watching right in front of us, and this is where we as working people had better take back the narrative. Republicans are making a play for working people by saying, no, we were never the corporate stooges that we've been all these years. No, we didn't push for, you name the neoliberal policy, free trade, all of this stuff. And look, Democrats were just as bad. Bill Clinton among these. Neolibs were not just Reagan and Thatcher. This ideology permeated a lot of the 80s and 90s. But you go back and you look at this. You look at all the deregulation. You look at all of the privatization. You look at all of the stuff that's happened. A tax on labor, redistribution of wealth through a tax code, because, hey, the smart people, they know what to do with the money. There's got to be a moment where we get tired of being pitted against each other, red hat, blue hat. And we put on a hard hat and say, you know what? What's most important is feeding the kids. What's most important is putting a roof over our head. What's most important is having some economic security to ensure that we have time to participate in a democracy. That's being taken from us. At every turn. And the frustrating part of this is, it used to be, it's the economy, stupid. We used to get this. We used to understand. But they've divided us with nonsense. And they know if they message something enough, because messaging works. Like neoliberals, those neoliberals over there, they ruined everything. Without taking ownership that it was the Reagan policies. It was Republican and Democratic policies that birthed these horrible programs that screwed over working people. And for who? The very wealthy. They knew what they were doing. I had someone tell me, free trade didn't work. I'm going, no, it worked pretty well. Free trade worked beautifully, worked exactly as it was supposed to. It got us addicted to being consumers. We have to spend. It got unions, broken down. Wages have been suppressed for 40 years now. It did all the things that it was supposed to do. More power in the hands of the few. The very wealthy sitting in our corporate boardrooms, they're never more powerful than they are right now. And we're eating each other. We're fighting each other. There's this great scene in the movie Hoffa. If you've ever seen it with Danny DeVito and Jack Nicholson. Great movie in my view. But there's a scene where they're going to the RTA bus strike scene, And there are a whole bunch of workers out there, and they're ready. They got their picket signs, and they're ready to strike. And the camera goes up to the window where the CEO is, where the chief of police is, where the mayor. You get all these bigwigs and having their drinks in the evening hours. And down below, they look like little ants down below. They're just mulling around. The rabble, the unwashed masses, just rambling around. And they're watching through the window, and Hoffa's they're marching with a reporter, and he said, "Do you expect violence?" And he goes, "Well, what if it comes?" That kind of stuff. And it gets to this scene where all of a sudden all the doors around the crowd open up, and there are big flashes of light, and just a mob of people come out with sticks and bats and all kinds of stuff. And there's just this huge mass of humanity, this violent ball of pain and suffering of people who just, at the end of it, want to put food on the table, want to make a living, need to make a buck to make it through the hard times. The Jay Gould, I can pay half the working class to murder the other half. This is it. This is what's happening in this moment. And they're pounding each other. And it's not like they've got uniforms on, so they know who's hitting who and which side you're on and which side you're on. These are just working class people in this giant hub of humanity and violence and blood and sweat and tears. And they're just beating each other senseless. And there's this great scene. The camera then pans up to where our corporate titans and our political elites are standing in the window, and they close the curtains and they go back to their day. They go back to their drinks. They go back to sitting on the couch, shake their heads like, "Can you believe this?" And while down below, literally, people are being beaten to death. This is where we are, and this is. Again, I come back to our politics. Our politics are not that difficult. It's which side are you on? When it comes down to, working class issues, and we better reclaim these because the right is trying to steal them. They've sold this idea that we're going to all be, billionaires and millionaires, and I wish some people would be. I want people to be okay. But not at the expense of everyone else. So when I look at New York, the law that New York just passed, and a good on them for establishing what is the first minimum wage for fast food delivery workers. And look, this is how far we've got to go down to ensure the most desperate workers aren't the ones who are the most harmed. They are now establishing a bottom rate, first time ever, announced by Mayor Eric Adams, that delivery workers are going to make at least $17.96 an hour plus tips by July 12th and at least $19.96 an hour by 2025. Now you go, well, who's going to pay that? I argue you're already paying that. It's just that the money is going to a handful of these big apps and these the people who sit at the top in those ivory towers. We're already paying it. It's just not trickling down to the working class. And, the more I come back to this stuff, for me, it really is about the economy. It really is about the job. If you trade hours of your day for wages to put food on your table, you're a working class person. Like it or not, I know we all like to think we're better than that. But that's the reality in the moment that we're in. And for me, fighting for the best opportunities for my family and for my neighbors, that's what's important. So when we get bogged down in all kinds of divisive outrage candy specifically thrown at us to keep us at each other's throats, this is where I make the plea. I reach the hand out. There are opportunities for us to grow and to move forward. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. You've got a question, comment, something on your mind, give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1914. That was the day that the Miners' Union Day Parade was scheduled in Butte, Montana. In spite of the festivities, trouble was brewing down in the copper mines. Many of the miners were growing increasingly aggravated with the Butte Miners Union Local 1, part of the Western Federation of Miners. Local 1 had been established in 1893, but some thought the union was too closely affiliated with the mine owners. Wages had been stagnant for more than 3 decades, despite the fact that the price of copper had more than doubled during that time. Mine owners stirred the pot even more by hiring Pinkerton detectives to infiltrate the union, instructed to promote violence. The day before the parade, 1,200 miners refused to show their union cards at the Speculator Mine. This meant that they were turned away from work. The next day, the miners' parade was met with jeers and taunts. Some of the protesters chased the union officials, who were riding in the parade on horseback. The angry crowd swelled and decided to attack the union headquarters. They ripped apart the union offices and tore out the union safe. They took the safe to a field and blew off the door with dynamite, finding $1,350 inside. Alderman Frank Curran tried to disperse the crowd, but they tossed him out of the second-story window of the union's office. Fortunately, he landed in a pile of carpeting that had been ripped out by the angry mob. He escaped with a broken arm and dislocated ankle. 10 days later, an unknown assailant blew up the Miners' Union Hall. Citing the violence they had encouraged as an excuse, the mining company declared it would no longer recognize the union. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So I got an email during the break. John writes, tax cuts, tax cuts, tax cuts. I voted for Trump for tax cuts. And look, you know, I've had people tell me this, and at least they're honest. He says, Dems always want to raise my taxes. Joe Biden wants to raise my taxes and give money to undeserving miscreants. And look, you know, this is the right-wing view, isn't it? That anyone who needs help from their government is a miscreant, is a lowlife. And I'll tell you, I'll be the first to say, I'm not ashamed to say that I'm where I am because our government, when I was a child, reached its hand out and helped put food on our table, put a roof over our heads. I'm alive because I was able to go to a hospital and get health care because my mother didn't have it. Because there were no jobs in our neighborhood. We weren't on the bus line. It just, you know, it was what it was. And the 1970s for a single mother was not an easy time. Last one hired, first one fired was generally how things worked. And to say, look, you know, helping me was a mistake, I'm sure, you know, some people would say. But the amount of taxes that I've paid back over my working life, you think about the investment of a couple $100 a month to put food on the table, a couple $100 a month to keep a roof over. I've paid that back, and I know a lot of other people who have as well. I've paid that back with an incredible amount of interest. So for me, part of social programs are investments in the future, are investments in people's lives to help them lead the kind of productive, very blessed life that I have had. The very fortunate, because you asked me as a 10-year-old, would I be where I'm at? No, couldn't have even fathomed it. But I want that kid growing up where I grew up to think that there's hope, there's opportunity, there's someone that cares. So when I look at this kind of response, it's all about tax cuts. Republicans are for tax cuts. You go, that's what they tell us, isn't it? But again, tax cuts for whom? Who exactly are getting these tax cuts? Well, House Republicans are they're on their way to considering a hat trick of horrible tax bills. The one of them, I love the name, the Tax Cuts for Working Families Act. I mean, it's beautiful, isn't it? We're helping working families because we care. But when you drill down into the numbers, and according to the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy, our 1%, our wealthy, the folks sitting in the ivory tower, they would reap about $28 billion, whereas the folks at the bottom, that lower fifth, would be about 1.4. In actual monthly dollar numbers or yearly dollar numbers, our richest 1% would pocket about $16,500. They're going to get about 16 grand. If you're in the bottom 20%, $40. Maybe dinner, really cheap. No, not even dinner. Maybe I don't even know what you get for $40 anymore. But this is what this is. You're going to get about $40. If you're in the top 20%, you're reaping the mass of this tax break. And they go, well, how are they going to pay for it? You know how they're going to pay for it. They're going after Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. They're going after what was and is helping us address the climate, because they can't have that. So the idea is, if we steal from the future, we can give the tax breaks now. And they're not even saying that it's going to spur growth. Remember the good old days? Do you remember the good old pie? Go back with me in the way back machine, with me, if you will. Do you remember when Republicans said, tax cuts pay for themselves because we're going to generate more activity, and it's going to make corporations bigger and create more jobs? Remember when they at least used to, prime you for what you were getting? Remember that? Oh yeah, those were the days. Well, they at least put on a song and dance. There was at least a little circus with the bread, a little bread with the circus. There was a little something. They didn't even try now. It's not even about that. You're getting $40. Shut up and like it. Because it's really about ensuring that the top 20% going to get about over $60 billion. Well, maybe you working stiff, maybe you'll maybe a fast food meal for your family. And this is the frustrating part of this, because they're not even trying to lie anymore, because they know we've already seen it. You go across the board, you look at these companies who bought back all these stocks, and we've given them all massive tax breaks because, hey, they need the cash, they need the capital, they need the liquidity so that they can invest in more factories and more machinery and more workers. And they're captains of industry. They know what to do. They're gonna get to work. And look, they are smart. They're brilliant. They pay for the best minds to come up with the most lucrative schemes that make them richer and the rest of us poorer. And look, I don't begrudge them of that. They've figured the game out. They've rigged the game. They've got the loaded dice. I'm waiting for us to wake up to this. Working people used to be streetwise. You used to see a con coming. Now we just keep getting hit by it, but it's tax cuts. Because they've trained us like Pavlovian dogs that anytime we hear the word taxes to start foaming. Whereas I go, okay, we're going to raise taxes. Well, who's it going to be on, and what's it going to be for? I'm not against paying taxes. I think we absolutely need them. And I think Joe Biden's done a pretty good job so far. I think the fact that we're beginning to do some heavy investment in our infrastructure is long overdue. The fact that we're reshoring some manufacturing, especially in the chip sector, long overdue, desperately needed. And something we should, as a country, be uniting around. This is the part that just gets, I am going, this used to be popular. Why isn't it now? Oh yeah, red hat, blue hat. I got to hate the guy over there because he's got a red hat or a blue hat on. I've got to agree with this policy. And look, these tax policies that Republicans keep bringing up, and understand, they're not going anywhere. Even if they were somehow to get through the Senate, and I doubt they would, Biden's going to veto it. But it shows priorities. It shows who's on whose side. The fact that if you're in the bottom 20%, they thought enough of you to give you $40. I think that should show you how they feel about you. Maybe I'm wrong, but I do want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Wherever you get your favorite podcast, you'll find ours. Quick break. Right back. Stick around.
With regards to the complete rebuild of I-95 roadway, we expect that to take some number of months.
Gas tanker fire leads to collapse of major freeway overpass.
There are likely farms in every state that are knowingly or unknowingly dealing with these chemicals.
3 manufacturers agree to billion-dollar settlement as states sue over PFAS chemicals in drinking water. Plus,
researchers say the latest event is gaining strength and could lead to record-breaking temperatures next year.
Buckle up! El Nino is here to intensify extreme weather around the world.
Oh, great! All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
There's little question that Canada needs to obviously focus on forest management, but this isn't the moment to start lecturing people about the science of climate change. Right now it's about putting out a fire and keeping people safe.
The moment when New York Congressman Mark Molinaro figured out how to recycle gun safety denialism for climate change. This is your Green News Report. All right, Desi Doyen, as fires continue to rage in Canada, you've got great news about El Nino.
Yes, unfortunately, El Nino has officially arrived. The naturally occurring periodic warm pattern in the Pacific Ocean that gooses global temperatures is expected to strengthen over the winter, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Forecasters warn that this El Nino occurs on top of record warm ocean temperatures, which will combine to intensify extreme weather around the world. Storms, droughts, deadly heat waves, you name it, that are already worsening from human-caused climate change.
I'd rather not name it. The last year or so, we had some record heat, even though there was a La Nina, which is supposed to cool things, right?
Uh-huh.
And now we're going to have an El Nino.
Making it even hotter. Yes.
Fantastic.
And it's likely that 2023 and 2024 will set new records for all-time hottest years globally. A new study calculates that El Nino impacts are actually far costlier than experts had thought, averaging trillions of dollars in long-term damage, forcing communities to divert resources to fund recovery and rebuilding.
Well, maybe this isn't the time to lecture people on climate change, Des.
NOAA also announced that levels of heat-trapping carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere increased to a new record high in May, jumping at one of the fastest rates ever recorded, hitting 423 parts per million at Hawaii's Mauna Loa Observatory. Quote, continuing a steady climb further into territory not seen in millions of years.
And we were worried that it would ever reach 400?
Yeah. In Philadelphia, an elevated section of Interstate 95, one of the region's busiest highways, collapsed early Sunday morning after a truck hauling gasoline overturned and ignited underneath it. The truck driver was killed. The National Transportation and Safety Board is on scene investigating. Pennsylvania's Governor Josh Shapiro issued a disaster declaration speeding up federal funding for repairs. He warned reconstruction of the highway is expected to disrupt transportation for months. And I'll just note here that the adoption of electric vehicles will help take explosive trucks off the U.S. highways. In accountability news, 3 manufacturers of toxic PFAS forever chemicals have agreed to pay more than $1 billion to settle the first wave of lawsuits alleging the chemical companies contaminated drinking water across the country.
That's good, but not enough.
The settlement came after multiple investigative reports revealed secret industry documents showing exactly how manufacturers DuPont and 3M knew decades ago that their PFAS forever chemicals were a danger to human health, but publicly insisted the chemicals were safe and purposely distorted public knowledge about PFAS in their products. A new study from UC San Francisco details how, quote, the chemical industry used the tactics of the tobacco industry to delay public awareness of the toxicity of PFAS and, in turn, delayed regulations governing their use.
Well, we got to have our Teflon pans.
Over the last 2 weeks, more than 24 states have filed suit against PFAS manufacturers to pay for the mounting costs of cleanup of the chemicals, which are now ubiquitous in the population and environment. Here's Maine's Attorney General Aaron Fry on CNBC.
3M and DuPont created these chemicals, had the science that showed just how dangerous they were, how toxic they were, how they were going to last forever. It is my responsibility to do whatever I can to hold accountable those companies that profited off of this chemical.
Good. Yeah, go get them.
And finally, some good news in Minnesota. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has revoked a crucial permit for a controversial proposed copper and nickel mine in the northeastern part of the state, concluding the permit did not comply with water quality standards set by a sovereign downstream tribe.
A lot of good news coming out of Minnesota these days. Wait a minute. Isn't 3M based in Minnesota?
Yes.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I get a kick out of this representative from Tennessee, Tim Burchett. I love how the Republicans are losing their mind over the Department of Justice doing their job. They've been overly politicized. They've been weaponized. The DOJ, boring bureaucrats. They've been weaponized. They're coming. Do you find it as interesting as I do that there doesn't seem to be a lot of leaks coming out of the DOJ? Now, understand, during the Trump year, it was like a sieve. And that was because the career people, the people who dedicate their lives, people like Renato Mariotti, who we had on the program last night, talked about his time there. What I find, the career people, they're invested in their job. They're invested in the DOJ. So if things are going off the wheels, they're going to do something about it. But if they think things are being operated properly, if they think that we're in both sides of the aisle, there aren't the leaks. It's not happening. So this is the weird kind of point that we're in. And I look at all the Republicans who are losing their minds, talking about how weaponized the DOJ has become and how, like I said, Ted Cruz saying, the reason is Merrick Garland hates Donald Trump. Yeah, it's that simplistic there, Ted. But this Burchett said that, they're going to use every tactic available to stop the DOJ from being overly politicized. And hey, if we got to cut their funding, if we got to defund the Justice Department, if we've got to defund the nation's top cop, if we've got to defund the police, we're gonna do it. Now, do you remember, like I do, the craziness? Do you remember the fun and the entertainment of Republicans going on and on about, Democrats want to defund the police? And when it first came out, I go, that's a stupid thing to say. There's almost nobody talking about defunding the police. And the few people that I came across who said, no, we gotta take, I told them they were stupid. Don't do it. It's not going to happen. And Republicans, you gave the Republicans this great talking point, and they were able to beat Democrats up with it. And now the Republicans are talking about, we're going to defund the entire freaking system because, well, their criminal got caught. So I was thinking about this today, and I was thinking about my grandparents again. You go back to the 70s. What if someone like Nixon would have gone, they've weaponized, how dare they question me? They've weaponized, the Department of Justice. They've weaponized the court system. They've weaponized all this stuff. I'm as clean as the driven snow. Do you think the people would have stood for it? And the answer is no. Because we used to believe in accountability. I said from the beginning, I don't believe in defunding the police. I believe we fully fund them and we support them when they're not wrong. When they make a mistake, accountability. I remember a time when Republicans were the party of personal responsibility and accountability. They're not that party anymore. They're none of that anymore. They've been taken over by children. They've been taken over by power mongers and attention seekers with no policy chops, with no interest in moving the country in a positive direction or helping working people make it through the next day. They don't care. Republicans hate working people. Just look at what they're doing. And talking about defunding the institutions that run our government is quite remarkable. Because remember, conservatives used to believe in preserving institutions. They were the ones who, we don't believe in tearing things down. The Republican Party right now is a bunch of radicals, sadly. And I keep saying, please, bring your party back to somewhere near the sane line. Just somewhere. I'm not even talking about fully sane. Just somewhere near. And, we're in this moment. And I want to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. Are you surprised that we're in this moment where Republicans are doing the things that they're doing, throwing the temper tantrums that they throw on the numbers? Look, there have always been the handful of attention seekers. There's always been the one or two. There was always the Ron Paul. There was always the Dennis Kucinich. There was always the one that was way out that, that got the attention for a minute, that asked the question that I argued back then had to be asked. But they, I think, believed that things had to get done. We've got people right now who the truth doesn't matter. Reality doesn't matter. And as long as it fits their narrative, they're going to, do whatever they want. I look at this thing with Marjorie Trainwreck Green. Came across a video that I was just scrolling through today. And it's her, during a committee assignment. It's her during a committee assignment saying that when she was in school, there was a gun, there was a shooting, or kids brought guns to school, and the kids had all these guns, and it was all because Joe Biden was president at the time and signed the gun ban in school zones, and none of it was true. It was not even remotely close to true, but, it sounded good. Let's go to the phones. What's your name and what's on your mind?
Hello, it's Alice.
Hey, Alice.
What I wanted to say was, I am not a bit surprised. We have steadily seen the Republican Party lose their minds over the past, I'm going to say 35 years. Really, I think it started, I believe, in the 70s, and then it's just gained traction. And you're right. They lie as easily as someone changes their socks, I guess. I mean, they lie about everything. And it's just amazing how their base eats it up.
Like my grandfather always said, they'd lie when the truth would be better.
Oh, you're right. I mean, even when you can disprove to them, and I'm talking even, when we've watched these hearings of different kinds going on, even when the facts are slammed in their face, like with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert in particular, they'll sit there and go, blah, 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 and then, come off with this whataboutism. It's just insane.
Yeah. No, but this is where it comes back to us. I think, Alice. I think we've got to demand more from our elected leaders, and I think Republicans, you got to take control of your party. Bring your party back to sanity.
Oh, I have to agree with you that and it seems to me that the more outrageous and insane that their candidates are, those are the ones that they seem to want anymore.
Yeah, that's the frightening part, isn't it?
It's crazy. But you have a good evening, Rick.
Thanks, Alice. Appreciate it. No, I mean this is unfortunately the world in which we're in. And look, does the left have some people out there? Sure, there's some folks who are out on the fringe that I think need to be reeled in a little bit, but not to the extent. Right now is about saving democracy. Right now is about saving the republic. But this idea we're going to defund everything and defund the things that ideologically we don't like. This is a new kind of a new moment. Just because, and I come back to, today was the day, Trump was arraigned. Justice is working. He will have his day in court. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I've been waiting all day to talk to my next guest about the big perp walk. Wasn't enough. I got some emails from folks a little disappointed by the turnout of crazies. We're expecting much, much more, or at least the media kept hyping up there'd be chaos. But I've asked my good friend Greg Palast to come share some thoughts with us. Greg is the New York Times best-selling author. He is also the director of the movie Vigilante, Georgia's Vote Suppression Hitman. You can check out all that stuff at gregpalast.com. Greg, thanks for being here, man.
Hey, glad to be with you.
So let's get your thoughts on the perp walk today. Was it good enough for you? Did you get anything out of it?
Well, I didn't expect to see the violence that some people were projecting. We actually have a guy, Zach Roberts, who works undercover inside the right-wing groups. So we've been tracking the crazies, and they deliberately stayed away from this one. So, but that doesn't mean that that there won't be violence at some point. I was just in Arizona at a Kerry Lake rally, and
that's got to be fun.
Undercover.
How can you be undercover?
Well, I changed my hat. I wore a cowboy hat painted with an American flag.
Wow. I got to get a picture of that.
Yeah, well, not yet. I still need that disguise. So instead of my investigative reporting. So we did that. But, Kerry Lake is saying if they come for Trump, they're going to have to come through me and 73 million Americans, and most of us are active members of the NRA. Now, she wasn't saying that like we're going to be marching in the streets like the NAACP. I think she mentioned NRA for a different reason. So the problem is I don't expect the kind of organized activity you had on January 6th. What I do worry about is nutcases trying to be heroes. If
Yep.
I were Jack Smith, I hope he has a lot of body armor and a lot of people around him.
Yeah, this is the thing.
yeah.
I mean, I worry that the DIM are going to take the marching orders because there was a guy yesterday that we talked about. The caricature of Florida man who said, this is going to make January 6th look like a playground. All we need's the order. And I don't doubt that guy would, if Trump said get your gun and come to the streets, I don't doubt he would.
Well, here's what we have to be concerned about. Merrick Garland dawdled for 2 years before appointing a special prosecutor. And in fact, Jack Smith was not assigned to do the January 6th analysis of Trump's crimes. And there's a very obvious crime, which is that if you're a policeman and you're watching a break-in at a bank, you can't just sit there, chewing bubble gum and forgetting about it. You're responsible.
Right.
So failure to act is a very, very serious, to carry out your federal duties is a very serious crime. So I'm waiting for Jack Smith on that, but he smartly divided his grand jury into two parts, one in Washington, which will probably take on the January 6 issues, which wasn't in his remit, but Merrick Garland cannot stop a special counsel from going where evidence takes him. In the case, so then he took the Florida route. Now I realize that is strategically difficult because you get a Florida jury and a Florida Trump judge. But he would have spent months and months arguing about whether the case should be in Florida and D.C. And he's more than aware that if Trump can kite this trial past the election, and if he gets elected, he will pardon himself on January 20th at 12:01 p.m. I have no doubt about it. So Jack Smith knows he's running against a clock. One of the things that I'm very disappointed in, I have to tell you, is that I was actually shocked that the Wall Street Journal came out and said this was a political prosecution, picking up the GOP line, even though they're quite anti-Trump, they don't want him to be the candidate. I think they realize he's going to be there. So they're coming up with this idea that it's a political prosecution. I want people to read that indictment. It reads like a novel. I've done a lot of work for Justice Department and others, and I've done racketeering cases, and I have to tell you, it's a beautifully written indictment.
I printed it off.
Yes, and one of the things people have to understand, Jack Smith had no choice. Let me give you a few things that the press seems to admit. To me, the number one thing, if I were going to the jury to put this guy in an orange outfit, is that he told his lawyer, there are only 12 boxes. They said, look, the archives and the Justice Department need to know how many boxes you have. The FBI wants to know how many boxes are there. And Trump said 12. And yet he was being sent cell phone photos. And I love the fact that the indictment actually has cell phone photos in it, not just attached. It's very unusual. They showed those cell phone photos that were sent directly and personally to Donald Trump by his so-called body man, who's now his co-defendant, Nauta. And they show 100 boxes. In one picture, I count 50. And Trump is telling him to move them, for example, to put them on, to sneak them up on Air Force One. Not Air Force One, excuse me, his private jet. But then Melania complained because there was no room for all her luggage because they were trying to move from Mar-a-Lago for the summer up to New Jersey. And she said, oh, there's no room. So she's literally like leaving a trail that we have these boxes which we're not supposed to have. And it's not minor stuff, including, for example, he shows the plans to attack Iran.
Yeah.
To attack Iran to his publisher, Ghostwriter. They don't have security clearances. And so he says there's 12 boxes. He literally says, tells his lawyer, I'm not going to go to New Jersey with my wife. I'll stay here. He didn't have to meet with the FBI. But Trump, while they came to get the boxes, to look through the boxes, Trump personally came down and told the FBI, that's it, I'm an open book. So he didn't even have to incriminate himself. He didn't have to tell that lie. He wasn't expected to be at the FBI meeting. His attorney signed a piece of paper saying, here's the 12 boxes, and we found 38 documents, confidential documents. Here they are in a folder. He told Trump he had that folder. He wouldn't give it to Trump, the 38 documents. And Trump looked at the folder and said, well, go through it, and if there's anything really embarrassing, go, whoosh. And he made a note to just literally throw away the documents.
Yep.
Now, it's true as he pointed out, that Hillary Clinton's lawyers deleted 38,000 documents for which they should be in prison right now. That's obstruction of justice by any measure. I'm sorry if people don't like me to say that. But this is not the same. That was Hillary Clinton's lawyers. This is totally different. This is Donald Trump himself saying destroy the evidence. Donald Trump himself sending dozens of boxes, hiding them in a bathroom. I love it that there's a chandelier in the bathroom. I guess he was expecting Putin to show up. He's hiding in the bathroom. Then he's shifting them around to storage units. Then he's taking them off, stealing them. It's theft, by the way. He's stealing these documents from the United States government and sending them to his private thing. And what is the point of it? The point of it, it looks like he was showing that document about the invasion of Iran as a response to General Milley, who said, I was afraid this guy was going to invade Iran to stay in office, to create a crisis. Now we know what that's about. Obviously, he asked Milley for the plans to invade Iran, and so Milley was completely freaked out. And so it came out in a book that he was calling the White House every morning to the Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, saying, we're not invading, are we? We're not invading, are we? Let's not invade. Let's land this plane safely. Let's not invade. And what Trump was doing was saying, oh, look, it was Milley's idea to invade Iran. Here's his plan. So, no, we have plans probably to invade Canada, too. But he was afraid. He was forced to give these plans to Trump. And here's the problem. We don't know where those plans are right now.